Going on, guys? Victor here with a brand new video. As you all know, UFC Fight Island 3 will be a go this Saturday from the Etihad Arena. Fans are finally going to be back in action. So obviously things are going to go back to normal for a little bit when it comes to the UFC until they come back to America, and obviously they won't be able to have fans here for a while. So the UFC is definitely trying to milk this cow during their third trip in Abu Dhabi for as much as they possibly can, maybe a week, maybe possibly 2 weeks, but who really knows? Obviously, there are planned events that will be going down for February in Las Vegas. So when they do come back from Fight Island, I believe they're going to be there for the rest of January. When they come back in February, all the events are going to be here in Vegas via the UFC Apex. But I'm going to talk about one of the fights that's going to be on this main card on Saturday from the Etihad Arena. It's going to be the last fight, which is going to be the returning Argentine Santiago Ponzinibbio with a 27-3 record versus the Chinese fighter coming out of China himself, Li Jingliang, with a 17-6 record. Obviously, both of these opponents are always game. They always give it their all when they go out into the octagon to fight. Santiago Ponzinibbio is definitely going to be coming in here with a lot of ring rust. He hasn't been back in the octagon for about 2 to 3 years, very close to 3 years, but he's been out for a very long time due to multiple injuries that's been going on throughout very long periods of time. But before that, Santiago Ponzinibbio obviously beat a good amount of guys. He knocked out Neil Magny. He beat Mike Perry. He beat Gunnar Nelson. He beat Nordine Taleb. He beat Zach Cummings. He beat all these guys. And he was ranked in the top 10 before his name got taken off that list for basically the inactivity purposes. But if he comes back, has a couple big wins, he can find himself in that top 5 position as fast as possible. Obviously, he's a very smart individual. He does do a lot of broadcasting. He does do a lot of commentary for the UFC Spanish division. So it's not like he's been totally out of action. He's been watching these fights. He's been watching the movement in the welterweight division. He's still in the game, but all he needs is a couple of fights and he'll be back in action. And if he has a good performance against Li Jingliang, which is going to be very difficult because Li Jingliang's last opponent, his last loss, was Neil Magny himself. And Santiago Ponzinibbio went out there and knocked him out pretty easily in a couple rounds itself, but he barely took any damage in that fight, even though it was a little bit back and forth until he did get that knockout. But Li Jingliang isn't a hard opponent to get out of there. He's a very tough individual. He goes out there, bites down his mouthpiece, and he's always trying to finish the fight himself. He's pretty fast, and he's got a lot of power in his hands, just like Santiago Ponzinibbio. Both of those individuals have pretty similar body types as well. They're pretty tall, but not too long. But like I said, they're pretty tall, but not too tall. I say both of them are probably around 6 foot something, and their body types are pretty much similar itself. Obviously, similar build, similar type, similar length. The length and reach probably won't be the same itself, but I do believe that this is going to be a very competitive fight. If I'm Santiago, I'm obviously going to try to keep this on the feet the whole entire time because he has a very good game on the feet. Obviously, when he was fighting Mike Perry did get him on the ground for a little bit of time. And obviously, when someone like Mike Perry doesn't really have that much Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gets you on the ground for a little bit, you're going to have a lot of trouble. Definitely facing a veteran such as Li Jingliang, who's been noticed as one of the first Chinese signees in the UFC. Obviously, the UFC is trying to still bust into that Chinese market, still bust into the Asian market, but they had a lot of trouble so far because of COVID reasons. But he's definitely the trailblazer when it comes to Chinese fighters, and a lot of Chinese fighters look up to him. And when he's on, he's on. When he's on fire, he's fire. He can put anyone in the whole entire division to sleep. But the only problem that he had is that he didn't really fight a lot of good competition before he fought Neil Magny. He fought a couple of guys that no one really knows in the divisions that don't have that much name notoriety when it comes to fighters, especially in a stacked UFC welterweight division. But he can put his name back in the hat with a win over Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's also want to keep this fight on the feet himself. This fight is definitely going to be a rock'em sock'em robots. I don't really believe it's going to be on the ground that much, because when he did fight Neil Magny, he was on the ground for the majority of the fight itself. When it was on the feet, he was getting some really good shots in against Neil Magny. He was busting him up with some pretty good shots a little bit. He didn't bust him up. When I mean bust him up, I don't mean he was bleeding or anything like that. He made Neil Magny bleed, but he was just getting some really good shots in there until Neil Magny was able to, get him onto the ground, because Neil Magny's a pretty good wrestler in his own right. And when he gets someone to the ground, it's very hard for them to get back up. He had that issue, and that's basically the main reason why he lost that fight. So for this camp, if he actually went back and made a lot of his wrongs into a lot of rights, if he decided to work more on the wrestling and a good amount on the feet itself. But if I were him, obviously, like I said, I would have worked on a lot of the wrestling and a little less on the boxing, because he's got the striking. He's got the striking accolades. The boxing is there. Obviously, when he hits you clean, you tend to go out. It wasn't for Neil Magny, because Neil Magny is a very strong fighter. He's a very resilient fighter as well. And he's also on the rise. So a loss to Neil Magny isn't a bad loss at all. I call that a quality loss. When you lose to a really good fighter who tends to be on the rise and also has title aspirations in the near future, that's a quality loss. Santiago Ponzinibbio, he's on a winning streak. Basically, he hasn't lost in a very, very long time. He's been out for a very, very long time. But if I were him, I'd keep it on the feet, but also work in your wrestling, because he's very good when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has a pretty good backstory. He was born and raised in Argentina, but he wanted to raise his mixed martial arts career to the next level, and he knew he wasn't going to be able to do that in Argentina, because mixed martial arts isn't a mainstay. It isn't a big stable in the country of Argentina. Soccer's the biggest sport over there, not MMA. So Argentina's connected to Brazil. He decided to move to Brazil. He was living in a tent outside for a couple of months until he found a really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu team, and also basically an MMA team in general that helped him evolve his game to the next level, brought his game to the United States of America, and he's been a mainstay over here in the States for a very long time. He's been a mainstay in the UFC for a couple years now, and he's had an amazing run in the UFC, but now it's time to get back on the horse. Now it's time to ride it to the sunset. Now it's time to drive this car until the wheels fall off, for crying out loud. He's finally back. He can put himself right back in the mix with a good win. If I were him, if I saw his fight, Li Jingliang's fight against Neil Magny, take him down and try to submit him, because he's got some really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I don't think Li Jingliang, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is on par with Santiago Ponzinibbio, so that's definitely a negative right there. But I definitely try to take him down. If not, try to get a body lock in there, push him against the cage, work some knees to the lower section of his body, try to weaken that section of the body a little bit, go in, change levels, go for a single leg, raise it up, and try to get that leg sweep. If not, go straight in for the double leg. If it's not working and you're eating elbows from Li Jingliang, who's on the top, disengage, meet in the middle, and try to do something else. Obviously, try to get a knee pick in there, or just try to do something. Those are the only takedown options that I would really think about doing myself. But obviously, if his wrestling is really of the par, since Santiago's been out for such a long time, we don't know if he's been training since his long layoff, but we're gonna have to see what happens. If you ask me who I think wins this fight, I'm going to go with the upset. I think Li Jingliang is going to win this fight. He's the fresher fighter. He fought last year. He's always training, and he's got a big chip on his shoulder because he represents one of the largest countries in the world, in China. So I do believe Li Jingliang is going to win this fight. I think he's going to finish Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think he's going to finish him in the third round, just because it's going to be hard to get him out of there. But that's it. That's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to share my opinions, share my thoughts, and kind of the keys to victories for both of these fighters. And just to put a little bit more emphasis on Li Jingliang, to get those shots in there, I just work the leg kicks. I love the leg kicks. I love the calf kicks. I even love the quad kicks as well, because they're becoming a new thing in the mixed martial arts and becoming really, really effective. It almost took out Wonder Boy, almost took out Darren Till. Basically, I think Darren Till ended up sustaining a MCL sprain because of a quad kick that he sustained from Robert Whittaker in their fight. So these quad kicks are very powerful. They're very destructive at the same time. I'll love to see more fighters start using them. Li Jingliang, will he use it? No, but if I were him, I'd start chopping to the legs because you don't know what condition those legs might be coming out from such a long layoff. Also, work the feints. Use the movement no matter what. Circle around. Use the angles. Use the head movement no matter what at all times. Try to see if you can be able to cut those angles. And when he's at a disadvantage, when Ponzinibbio isn't looking, when he's taking his guard off and his eyes off of you, go in for the kill no matter what. That's my biggest advice for Li Jingliang. If he wants to represent China, he only had one fight last year. If you want to go into this 2021 with a bang, you do with the finish over Santiago Ponzinibbio. Appreciate you guys for watching this. Going to put more content out there in the future. And let's get it on. This Saturday, back in the Etihad Arena, the beautiful Etihad Arena. Can't wait. Later, guys.